And good evening and welcome to the November 9th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you that are with us here tonight. We're glad to have those that are at home watching on TV. Before we stand for our pledge, I would like to ask you to remember during our moment of silence an educational assistant who worked for us at Hobgood School by the name of Jody Stone, who died suddenly this past week. But now I'm going to ask you to stand. We have Nia Steele, a sixth grade student from Cason Lane, and Prince Rochelle II, a sixth grader from Hobgood, to lead us in our pledge, followed by our moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. Board members, I'll remind you again, please remove your mask when you're speaking so that TV can pick up on what we're doing. Have a motion to approve the agenda, please, as printed. You've all seen the agenda and had an opportunity to look at it. Do we have a motion to do that?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Communications. Ms. Trail?
Hello, Board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a very few notes on my communications tonight. First of all, we're going to start with Welcome Leadership Rutherford.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. That's a big check mark on one of those things y'all have to do, right? So we're glad to have you with us. Also, that's not listed. Discovery School applications are now available, so if anyone is interested in looking at Discovery School, applying for Discovery School, whether it's an incoming kindergartner through sixth grade, there are openings. That's for the next school year, so it would be for the 2022-23 school year. Everything you need to know about that is on our website, either at the City Schools website or on the Discovery School website. Next week is American Education Week. We are so glad to always be able to celebrate. This is a week we celebrate everyone who works in education. So our staff will be cheered on with a few little treats and goodies along the way throughout the week, and I'm sure our PTOs will help in that process as well. So we are very happy to have time to say thank you for all the things that our staff do every day. Mitchell-Nielsen Primary would also like to say thanks to Mars Unify for their generous donations that will allow them to help 40 families during Christmas. Greg Lyles and Ms. Charisse and their team are also working on lots of different ways to help our children over the holidays, and he will be reporting on that next month. So with that all said, that is all of my communications, and if it's okay for me just to move on to our spotlight.
No, it's not.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, I'm not okay with that. I believe there's one more announcement.
It's one more thing we need to do. Can you, I'm not going to ask you to spell my line,
I can spell it every day except when it in my
but I do want to congratulate you. Lisa was second place winner in the,
I like runner up, sounds better.
and you did receive a silver.
I did. I was a top fundraiser.
Oh,
That says a whole lot for my colleagues.
And I am sure that the majority of people that contributed because Lisa Trail was there. Thank
I
you
don't
very
know.
much
It's a
for
great
representing
cause,
us.
and I did wake up in the middle of the night thinking I lost on a 6-letter word.
You may have lost that, but you won because you outdid other school systems around.
I did.
That's important.
I wasn't even going to
Congratulations
mention
to
that, but yes, I did.
you. Congrats to you, and we're proud of you.
I may have missed the word just because I was so excited. But anyway, so thank you. It was not fun. But I suggest one of you do it next year. Anyway, now can I move on?
But you did better than those that came in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
I did.
See?
I
Right.
did.
You're
Don
one of
Barch
the
and
top
I are.
two spellers in the county.
Yeah, Mr. Barch and I are in the runner-up club. He misspelled marmalade. It was at least more than 6 letters. So, anyway, okay, we good?
Yes, ma'am.
I get to do the spotlight on education this month, and I'm so proud to do it. Dr. Duke allowed me to take over the podium for just a second. Really, we want to focus our spotlight on our City Schools Foundation. And I know most of you know about them. Many of you have been to our events. In fact, I think all of you have been to our events. Some of you have put on chair covers for me and all kinds of other things like that. So this group of business leaders did begin in 2005. And right now, just so you know, our board members, Travis Lampley is our chair, Vicki Eastham is our vice chair, Justin Burris our treasurer, Kimberly Robertson our secretary, Ellen Slicker, Eric Newell, Catherine Lehman, Joe Fays, David Scott, Charlie Patel, Andrew Young, Stephanie Roach, and Robin Morgan make up the rest of our board. We have lots of other people who serve on committees that are a part of our fundraising. And then Mr. Wes Ballard serves as our board liaison. So we are so appreciative. As you can see, it's across the city and across different spectrums in business. Miss Stephanie is with me here tonight. She gets to answer any questions you may have. Stephanie is actually chairing our fundraising for this year, and we're going to have some doozies, a little bit of difference this year. So to date, the City Schools Foundation has raised over $1 million for Murfreesboro City Schools.
Wow.
And we are very proud of that. It's closer to 1,100,000, but over $1 million just sounds so good. So, our fundraisers are Excellence in Education and Back to School Dash. We have typically had our Excellence in Education in January. We moved it last year because of COVID. We actually enjoyed it so much being in the spring that you can look for that to come again in the spring this year. We also liked a little bit more of the informal setting, so I think that's what Stephanie and her crew are going to be doing again this year. And then our Back to School Dash. We have had the Dash twice virtually. We hope so much that next year it is in person. But again, it's just a group of great individuals coming together to support our schools, and I appreciate them. Some have children still in schools. Many of them, their children are way past Murfreesboro City Schools, so we appreciate that. What we did last year, and I just want to do it really brief going back to 2020 because the foundation really had to redefine itself. We had a couple of phone calls with, at the time, Dr. Gilbert, of course, and then Mayor McFarland to say, we have a need, how can we step up? My board never hesitated, and we shifted and did the necessary votes to be able to really take on some other fundraising efforts that we had never done in the past. Because of that, we were able to do over 17,000 weekend food bags to the children. So we just became that kind of supply chain of donations in and out. Those donations came mostly from individuals, and I have to say a lot of them came from individuals who had never donated to the foundation before, so we were really pleased with that. We also had a need in the summer to, we weren't ready to go full, so we needed some Chromebooks in our system. That was Mr. Ring's staff and I looking and saying, what can we do and who can we get these from? Our foundations stepped up, purchased 170 Chromebooks, and they were ready to go. So we did get lots of other ones, and we got fully, up to date really quickly, but at the time we weren't sure what we were going to have. So our foundation did once again step up and buy 170 Chromebooks. In the fall, we pulled down our number just a little bit just because we had just spent $50,000 on Chromebooks, and we spent $33,000 on teacher grants because my foundation did not want to not give those teachers the grants they deserved. We did $20,000 in parity dollars, and that goes to our qualifying title schools. And then last week, we distributed over $48,000 to teacher grants. We were so pleased to do that. And then we'll have parity grants again in the spring. So I should have saved this for you, Stephanie. But if you want to say, Mark, I've got more to come, but I'll let you just tell me what's coming up a little bit.
Our Excellence in Education is kind of our signature fundraiser. We're so excited about it. In the past, we've held it at different venues, Stones River Country Club, MTSU. But this year, we're branching out a little bit, and we're going to enjoy some outdoor, indoor. And we just look forward to having a great time with all of you. So we hope to see you there.
So mark your calendar.
Yes, please.
April 30th. We've already made sure nothing else is really a big conflict in that. And most likely we'll have a new type of fundraiser as well. So, anyway. All right, let me see what else I get this. So our grant, I wanted y'all to know about the grants because several of you were able to travel with me to give out those grants, but some were not. Irma Siegel received a large grant. They had our largest grant this year, $10,000. They also had 2 other music grants. Both of those were about $3,000. So in total, I think Irma Siegel, right under $16,000 from the foundation. So I'm going to let Emily come up. Actually, we'll get both Emilys to come up and just, I wanted you to understand kind of what's going on with these grants once they're awarded.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
We did get a grant for Learning Outside the Box, and basically what that is an outdoor campus, not just a classroom, but a campus. We already have a pond area, and it just needs to be revamped, and we want to use our entire campus. So when I wrote the grant, it kept in mind all Tennessee symbols, so we're going to have the state flower, and we're going to have birdhouses to hopefully attract the mockingbird and maybe not get pecked. And just use all of our campus. We're so lucky right now that we already have the farm to school program, so we have greenhouses and raised beds, and so we want this just to become an outside of the box learning environment for our kids. Just with COVID, everybody's been stuck inside, and so it's time for us to get out and enjoy nature and learn outside of the box.
I just want to jump in, and I feel very confident in saying thank you to the Murfreesboro City School Foundation for all of the principals in Murfreesboro City. What they do for us allows our teachers to be innovative and bring new opportunities to our children every year that we would simply not be able to do without their support. So thank you, Murfreesboro City Schools Foundation, and thank you, Board, for allowing us to have such a great partnership. So we truly appreciate it, and we cannot wait for you all to come see our outdoor classroom.
So that's pretty much it for me. I just wanted to take time to thank our foundation and know that many of our board members would have liked to be here tonight. I am so grateful that Stephanie was able to make it. If you have questions, I will take them or I will ask them for help.
Ms. Barton?
Not a question, just a comment. And I know those of you that have been on the board for a while know this, but we have a foundation because of Lisa Trail. And so, yeah.
It was way before I came along.
I'm just telling you, you've promoted it quite a bit. And she has done a lion's share of the work and continues to do that to keep the relationship between the foundation and the city schools and constantly getting great board members for that, for that board. So thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Yeah. We are fortunate to have a foundation. Not all school districts have that. And just working with foundations across Tennessee, you realize how much bringing business leaders together to help our educators really does make a strong impact. So for all of you leaders at Rutherford, if y'all want to come and talk about foundation, we got it. So, and that's it, sir. I think I've taken enough of your time on the podium.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, very much. And we do, as Roseanne said, we appreciate what you have done with the foundation and others as well. It hadn't always been there, but it is a wonderful organization that gives tremendous amount of help to our teachers in our school system. Thank you again very much. All right, consent items. We have a motion to approve the consent items.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you, Mr.
Settled.
Second, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Richardson. Any questions, comments? All in favor to approve the consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, action items. COVID protocol.
Yes, sir. Good evening, board. It's a pleasure to be with you again tonight. During our September 26th board meeting, the board voted to renew a temporary mask requirement in all MCS buildings when individuals are indoors and when social distancing cannot be maintained. Keeping in mind and honoring the opt-out requirement per the governor's executive order. Currently, we have 816 students who have opted out of the requirement. That's approximately 91% of our students. The number of opt-outs has increased approximately 116 since our last meetings. I believe last time we were together, we had 700 students who opt out. That number has increased. We have been publishing our numbers weekly on our website, and you'll notice that we continue to see a decrease in our cases. This past week, we showed 12 positive student cases and 3 positive staff cases in our schools. We've had total positive counts of under 20 for the last 3 weeks. I say that with a little disclaimer. This week has not been as positive. So we have seen a pretty significant uptick in the first 2 days of this week. Just want to put that out, as those numbers won't be released till next week. Although we have seen a decrease in our numbers, the CDC is continuing to list Rutherford County in the highest community spread category due to our number of cases in the latest 7-day average. We're very excited that those families who are interested in vaccinating their children can now do so. So that is available, as you are very well aware. And working with Nurse Walker and our coordinated school health team, we know that that entire vaccination process is going to take approximately 5 weeks from the time of their first shot until they're fully vaccinated. Our current mask requirement does expire tomorrow, November 10th. I'm bringing a recommendation to the board tonight that we go ahead and extend that until the end of the semester, again, when indoors and social distancing cannot be maintained. The last day would be Friday, December 16th. Again, we would honor the governor's opt-out order, and families can continue to opt out. Any of the 816 students who have currently opted out will automatically be grandfathered in, and that is the recommendation I'm bringing. That will give all of our families ample time to be fully vaccinated. So when we return in January, my recommendation is that we return completely mask optional for all in the school system. And that way we can communicate with our parents, this is the date we're moving back. So if they are very concerned, they know the timeline and know the urgency with which they can take the precautions their family needs to take. That being said, with my recommendation, I do think it's important to note that the General Assembly has proposed legislation which would make mask optional immediately. As of tonight, this hasn't been signed by Governor Lee. Should the law go into effect, of course, that would supersede our mask requirement, and masks would become optional for all persons in the school immediately. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Mr. Settles?
Trey, can you give me those numbers again, those opt-out numbers? I think I misheard something that you said.
Yeah. So last time we met and discussed, I believe, was the end of September. We had 700 students who had opted out, I believe. And as of today, we're at 816. So that's 91% of our students have not opted out.
Okay, that's what. Yeah, you said 91 have opted.
No,
and I almost fell out of my seat because I thought that was weird. Okay.
91 have not opted out.
Have not. So, thank you.
Ms. Goff?
Well, I respect your opinion on that, I really do, and we always go with your recommendation, but I'm kind of ready for us to drop the mask. I would like to see us drop it either now or at the Thanksgiving break. I don't know if any of the other board members feel that way, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Mr. Ballard?
I would just say that we're going to drop it when the governor signs it, which is, he's got until Friday to decide what he's going to do. So I think this thing's going to go, I think we're going to be in a mask optional only situation based on the governor signing the legislation. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, that is a correct assessment. So assuming my understanding, and I'll talk a little bit and then let Elizabeth tell me where I'm incorrect, but according to what we understand is the governor has 10 days to sign the legislation. Once the legislation hits his desk, If he doesn't sign it or he doesn't veto it, then it automatically goes into effect. So our understanding is, and it's been kind of difficult narrowing down when that actual 10th day is, but to the best of what we can figure is by the end of this week, he will either have to have signed the law, vetoed the law, or will automatically go into effect. And then once that happens, if he signs it or it goes into effect, it would supersede this and we would be a mask optional immediately.
I did see a report today, I think it was from Murfreesboro Medical Clinic, where they were stating that they had seen some increase in cases in the last few days within our county and within their facility. Other comment, Mr. Settles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Friday's the D-Day, then I don't see any harm in extending it anyway.
That's right.
Because if Friday's going to be the end of it, it'll be the end of it. But we don't have to prematurely end, which would be tomorrow. So I'm in favor of extending it until we're told otherwise. Now, I do have other inclinations, which are beyond that of what you all are willing to do, so I'll keep that. But for my taste, I say extend it to the end of the semester and come back, and we'll see where we are. But I'm of the opinion that well, I'll put it in this vernacular: we ain't out of the woods yet. So I'm in favor of extending it. Take your recommendation. I would follow with that.
Are you making that in form of a motion?
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Any other comment or question? If not, all in favor of the motion, and that would be to extend the opt-out until,
December 17th is the last half day.
all right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Unanimous vote. Thank you, sir. All right, approval of the immigration grant.
Yes, sir. MCS was recently awarded a new state grant for FY22 for Title III, which is for Immigrant Student Federal Grant, in the amount of $22,913. This is a discretionary grant, and we were deemed eligible based on the increase in the number of immigrant students in MCS this year compared to previous years. The Immigrant Student Grant is to be used for enhancing educational opportunities around the instruction and language development for immigrant children within our district. Specifically, our plan for this fund is to provide some additional training for our ESL teachers, our administrators, and our coaches on best practices in working with our ESL students. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding this program or the grant.
Mr. Settles?
Thank you. How many non-Spanish speaking ESL students do we have?
Let me clarify just for a moment. We have right around 10% of our students who are ESL students. So that would put us around 900 total. The difference, and I want to specify between ESL and immigrant, is our immigrant students are students who were not born in this country. And so that's what this grant is for. So we have quite a few ESL students who were born here in the country. So currently we have 616 immigrant students in our country. You are correct that the largest percentage of those do come from Central and South America, which is about 60% of our immigrant students. And then it's kind of broad from there. But after you take out Central and South America, the next largest number is from Egypt, which is about 13% of our immigrant students.
We have a motion to approve the grant as explained by the director.
So moved.
Ms. Barton, have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Ballard?
This is just kind of a related, but not to the passage of this motion. When we go into the testing period, when we go into the TCAS, is there any change or any adjustment for the ESL students?
So,
in other words, if the student from, is English as second language, does that go right into the mix of our scores?
Not immediately. So it depends on when they entered a U.S. school and when they came. So it's, to not go into too much detail, it's a phase-in process. So the first year, they do take the test immediately. Those scores may not count, do not count the first year. The second year, you're looking at growth, and it's by that third year in that U.S. school that they actually phase into our program.
Okay, so there is some wiggle room in there when we get, I mean, we're obviously going to take a hit each time when they sit down to take that test.
Well, yes, and I think probably the way we look at it is like the state does allow for that phase-in process so that if a student was to come in, immediately their scores would not be replicated into they would have to have served time in our school system.
Okay,
Over a period of years.
all right, thank you.
We have a motion and a second to approve the grant as presented. Any other question or comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Budget transfers and amendments.
Yes, sir. First, we have two budget amendments to bring before you tonight. The first is the consolidated funding application. This is in our federal fund, and this is reoccurring federal money we get every year. When we actually brought this budget to you in May of 2021, it was based on preliminary allocations, which is how we always budget these funds, based on what we expect to get. The funds include our Title I program, our Title II and Title III program, our IDEA, which is our special education program, as well as our special education preschool. We now have received actual allocations and actual amounts, which is one of the reasons why we are bringing this amendment to you tonight. First, we were awarded an additional $28,417 that we need to budget. And the second reason is we did have unspent carryover funds that we would rebudget this year, which is very typical. There were no programmatic changes with this amendment to what you approved in May. The only change that we are recommending is using $10,000 from the increase in IDEA Part B special education funds to provide a second semester recruitment and retention incentive for our best or our behavior classroom teachers who complete the school year with us. This is a very hard to staff position, and we currently have an opening. This would be a one-time $2,000 bonus. This amount is commensurate with the amount we use for other hard to staff positions. I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding this. And to further clarification, you may know these positions better as our teachers who are housed at Mitchell-Nielsen in that behavior program.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Richardson.
I think the incentive is a brilliant idea. Come graduation time at MTSU in December, there's going to be a lot of fighting over these very qualified teachers, and I think we need to get them into the Murfreesboro City School family. So I would ask that it be moved and accepted.
Is that in form of a motion?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
All right, sir, thank you.
I'll
Do we have a
second it.
second? Mr. Settles will second it. Now, any discussion or question?
I did have one bit of information. So our best classroom is only at Mitchell-Nielsen, is that correct?
Currently, it's a district program, but those 4 classrooms are housed at
Housed
Mitchell-Nielsen.
at Mitchell-Nielsen.
Yes. They do include students from across the district, though.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, summer learning camp.
Yes, sir. The second budget amendment we have tonight is regarding our summer learning and transportation grant, and this is actually for the summer learning program that has already happened. The board approved the summer learning and transportation grant in May for the June summer school semester. This amendment budgets the remaining $490,000 for the second semester, which was held in July. The amendment is necessary because this program actually crosses 2 fiscal years. This does not represent any new money or any new programmatic changes. The Summer Learning and Transportation Grant, as you may recall, funded our teachers, our bus drivers, our bus assistants, our EAs, our crossing guards, and materials and supplies. So this is just to make sure we have this correct, since it did cross fiscal years. I will say I'm very happy to report it is our understanding that we will get another round of state funding for next year's summer school program, that we'll be able to continue that great program that Ms. Arnett and her team put together. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have regarding that.
I see no questions coming up. Do we have a motion to approve the summer learning camps and transportation grants?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and it approved. Reports and information. Inclement weather, let's don't even talk about it.
I'm sorry, I forgot this part. Inclement weather, from what I understand, it's going to be a lot of snow days. No, that's, so we always go through this every year for inclement weather, whether it is a snow day or it's rain or blizzard, tornado. We do have a plan. And I think that's the most important thing, is for everyone to know there is a plan. We do follow that directive as we go through to decide when it is appropriate to call off a school day, when it's appropriate to go 2 hours late or leave a little early. We typically don't go late because it's so hard on our children. Really, it's hard on the parents to get children ready, not knowing whether they need to go to work or not. So for that, Dr. Duke will work with our transportation department, he'll work with our maintenance department, he'll work with the street department, as well as Murfreesboro Police Department in determining whether a road is safe for a school bus to be on it. And I think that's where we get lots of questions. It's all about whether a school bus can roll. This is where my friend James gets lots more accolades than I do, because they have a much bigger property to look over. But I will say our street department does a great job of letting us know in advance what's going on, letting us know where there are slick spots, and mainly just keeping our roads open. So as we go through that, we will let our local media know. Typically first, it goes to WGNS and the Daily News Journal, Murfreesboro Post, then, and obviously City TV as well. They help me get that word spread, and then we go from there. So we'll let our local news know, we will let our social media posts go out, and all call goes out from me to our families, and then we also go through all of the news channels in Nashville. So that's pretty much how we do it. And again, we follow that AD throughout the process, whether it's a flood or a snow. We just get more conversations with snow. Any
Thank
questions?
you, ma'am.
All right.
We have a motion to approve the inclement weather in professional.
We're gonna have to motion.
I don't think you have to have a motion.
Report.
Okay. That's a report. Thank you, ma'am. We don't need to approve your report.
It was a good report, though.
Yeah, it was good. All right, budget development timeline.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
So very good to see you again, and it's that time of year. And it's Christmas. So we have before you a proposed budget timeline, and it centers around data collection and documentation. One of the big differences this year from previous years, we're starting a little bit sooner than we did last year. So we're using some similar reports. So the forms that we send out to you will look very familiar. And the facilities needs assessment form will go out about 2 weeks earlier than it did last year. That will give Mr. Williford in our maintenance department a little bit more time to go around, visit all of the schools, look at the playgrounds, look at the facilities, and get some quotes and some collection on that. And it's, like I said, it's very similar to what it was last year. One thing I will say, towards the end of the budget cycle in March and April, May and June, this will change depending on the city's final calendar. And the city will, normally they release their budget calendar in January. So we have built in some flexibility to continue to work with the city on this budget development and approval process. So we are compiling data now for all of our funds, our school nutrition fund, our ESP fund, our general purpose fund, and I know I'm forgetting one.
Federal.
Pardon?
Our federal funds.
Thank you. The big pot, $26 million in federal funds. How could I forget that? So we are collecting data not only on the expenditures, but we're looking at revenue. So in addition to compiling data on the revenue and expenditures, we're also looking at fund balance. And that's what we're working on right now with our auditors. So we'll have some good clean numbers for you to say, this is our fund balance, this is how much cash we have in the bank and what we can use from prior years to help budget any deficit in our revenues, or let's just say differences in our revenues. So, as I said, the forms that you received last year, you'll be very familiar with the forms that you received this year as well. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this very important process.
Have any questions? Exciting time of the year.
Yes, it
Exciting.
is.
Thank you, ma'am, very much.
Thank you.
All right, director's update.
Yes, sir. Just a few things. First of all, I want to echo Ms. Terrell and say welcome to Leadership Rutherford. We're so glad you're here tonight. It's such an incredible opportunity they have to come together and invest in the community. So I just wanted to echo that. Had a great chance to speak with them. I think it was last week. We had a lot of fun with that. So thank you guys for being here. I spoke to a few of you, and there were some requests made to kind of quickly recap what some of this impending legislation coming down and kind of a big picture overview of what it may mean for the school. So I'm going to give just kind of a 360 view specifically around face mask and quarantines and what we are understanding. And then Ms. Taylor is going to talk as well about some of the federal guidelines that are coming out and what we know then. Now, and I want to emphasize this is what we know now. And we know a lot of things can change, and this is a very fluid situation as there are laws coming from the state and local level, or the state level, as well as the federal level. So specifically regarding the law that was, the legislation that was just put forward by the General Assembly, there are a couple key points in there that I want to bring out to you. The first one is that it's really clear that LEAs cannot mandate the vaccine. I think it's important to know that that was already in state law. So it was almost, in this state, a restatement of that provision that was in state law that was passed last year. Specifically around face coverings. There are some requirements that have been put in place that we would have to, as a board and as a school district, keep in mind moving forward. The first is that it is on a school-by-school basis by state law. So it would not be a requirement where we would put the district under a face covering requirement. It would be school by school. That request would have to come from the principal of the school. So the principal of the school would send a request to the board requesting that their campus be put under under a face mask policy. The board could then approve that for only 14 days at a time. So there are it's a little more stringent on how that approval process happens. And I think the biggest piece here is that the principals could not make that request, and the board subsequently could not approve that request unless the county was at a 1,000 cases per 100,000 population rolling average. So for some context, we are very far from that right now. We are sitting, when I looked on Monday, I think right about around 116 is where we were on Monday. When we hit that rate, we hit that rate at the end of August, beginning of September. When we were really in the peak is when we were at that rate in the county. So a very short time period there. So those are the big things we'll have to kind of remember and keep in mind, is that we first and foremost have to meet that severe condition clause that says the cases are that high. And at that point, principals would be able to send the request to the board asking for that. The other major change that is in this law, that is when it's going to come to us as a school system, is the quarantining process. We feel we have been very intentional with our quarantines this year. We have quarantined with the dramatic increase in cases per case. We have quarantined much more fewer students than we had in the past. We've been very, as I've said, we've used kind of a scalpel approach and not just, we're going to quarantine everybody, which has been very successful for us. Under this new law, the quarantine process is given to us by the Commissioner of Health, and she has the sole authority to develop those quarantine guidelines. So we would have to wait to quarantine any student to make sure that we were following guidelines that were put forth by the Commissioner of Health. As of today, it is my understanding we have not received any of those. So that's something we'll be working through if this law goes into effect, and how we respond to that if we haven't received those guidelines yet. Questions on that for Ms. Taylor? myself. Or any questions on that specifically, and then I'll ask Ms. Taylor to speak on some topics.
I have a question on what you said earlier about within the school and the principal. Okay, so the principal has to get that approval from the board.
Yes, sir.
Now, can that be a board vote by telephone? Or we got to come back into special session to approve that? Or
It would have to be in an open meeting of the board, whether that would be a special session or the regularly called board meeting.
So if it were to happen tomorrow, we're going to be 2 weeks off before we would be able to approve it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Or you could choose to call a special session to vote on it. And I know, well, I don't think, I would have to look, because I know in the law there are provisions that would allow boards to meet electronically. I don't know that this would necessarily fall into that, probably not. So it would either have to be a special called board meeting or the regularly scheduled meeting in order for the board to meet and vote on the principal's request.
It could not be by Zoom?
Probably not, no.
Will you check on that, please?
I will.
If you're pretty confident that I'm okay with it.
I would say I'm 99% confident that this would not meet the criteria to have a quorum of the board not in the same location. So, no.
Settled?
My question, Ms. Taylor, can the board in its authority authorize the principal to make that call?
I would say no, because it says they have to request approval of the board.
They do request approval of the board, yes.
On an individual school-by-school basis. And so that would mean the principal of Black Fox would have to come, and the board couldn't just say the principal of Black Fox scales overall are empowered to make this decision,
No.
because it has to be an individual school-by-school vote by the board.
What I was asking is, just as we authorize the director to make other decisions, are we allowed, and you, I'm asking, so research it first.
The plain letter of the law says that the principal has to make the request to the board.
I understand.
And the board has to approve it. So I don't think that reading the black letter of the law and the plain
And
letter.
you're a lawyer.
I am a lawyer.
And most lawyers I know, and there's a couple up here, I don't want to say exploit gray areas, but just as we authorize him to make other decisions, and I'm just asking you to dig, well, there's 3 right here. I'm just asking for me, if you can dig a little deeper and find out if there's a possibility that we can authorize the principal, once we receive the request, to make that call. I'm just asking, I'm not saying that's what we're gonna do, and you don't have to answer right now, I'm just putting it out there.
I'll look into that.
Thank you. Because I don't want to take 14 days or what have you, or a special session, and I know that it was written specifically to make it more difficult. I know that. But I don't want it to be that hard for us to do. That's my only thing. And I'm sure that's why Butch was asking the question about electronic meetings, this and that. Time is of the essence when we're dealing with this type of thing. It's not like we have that much time. And I understand that we meet twice a month, and we can have a special call meeting. All that is wonderful and excellent. And since there were great pains taken to make it more difficult to do this, I'm asking us to exploit every possible situation wherein we can do this more expeditiously. That's my only request.
Okay. Somebody else had a question.
Well, I was going to say, if you were on that webinar this past week with Ben Torres, where he covered all of the legislative decisions, it was pretty clear cut that the board will make the decision. And when we have that conference next weekend, I think that would be a good time to ask that question, because they will have special sessions set up just for the legislative decisions that were made this past.
We won't remember to ask it. I would just, I'm like David. if we need to do it, the quicker we can do it, the better. But I understand what, you know, the law.
I agree, and I understand where Mr. Settles is coming from, but again, the law is the law.
I'm a law keeper for the most part.
Go ahead, Dr. Duke.
The only other topic that was asked that we discuss or give a brief overview of tonight was coming from the federal level regarding the OSHA requirements that the President administration has put forward and the impact that may have on the school system. So I've asked Ms. Taylor to give a very brief understanding of where we are now with that.
So as I'm sure you've heard, the Biden administration released an emergency temporary standard regarding COVID vaccinations in the workplace. So I'll give you the short answer first as to where we stand, and that's to be determined. At this point, it's unclear as to whether the standard will go into place, and if it does, when that will be, due to the pending litigation that has been brought forth regarding it. So the standard was issued on November 4th, and it took effect on November 5th, and November 6th, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a stay to halt the enforcement of it. In addition to the Fifth Circuit, there are several other federal circuits where cases have been filed, including Sixth Circuit, which is where Tennessee sits. So what will likely happen is that the federal circuit courts will hold a lottery to determine which circuit will get to ultimately decide the case. And of course, which circuit gets the case has a big bearing on the outcome of the case based on the judges that sit in that circuit and the politics of that circuit. But so, I mean, the answer now is we're in a stay. So as of right now, it's not enforceable, but that could change down the line. And so that's kind of where we are now is we're just kind of in a holding pattern waiting to see how these federal cases play out in regards to that rule.
Okay.
I think what's really important and what I'd love our parents to know is that we are watching it all really closely. And so whether it's the legislation that's being brought forth at the state level or the federal level, as soon as we have concrete information, we're going to respond very quickly and get messaging out to our parents very quickly regarding this is where we are as of today, so that we can make sure that our parents are informed and that we're in compliance with the law as well. So we've had a lot of conversations preparing for multiple different scenarios so that we can communicate very swiftly with our parents.
Okay, thank you.
The only other update I will remind the board of is that this Thursday is Veterans Day, so our students will not be in school. That will be a day off for our students. Our teachers will be planning as we honor Veterans Day.
Okay. All right, other business, I'll remind the board of the TSBA Leadership Conference and Convention, not this weekend, but the next weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Mr. Chairman?
And Sunday too, I think.
Yes, Sunday usually.
Okay, and also remind you, you all got an invitation for a joint meeting this Friday at 10 o'clock, I believe, at Rutherford County School Board office with the County Board and Health and Ed Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a statement concerning a statement that was made by a citizen speaker in our last board meeting that I personally found to be rude, disrespectful, and also beneath the proceedings and deliberations of this body. I don't think that our meetings should be used for partisan division or dog whistle political statements. I, along with the other board members that I serve with, when we step into this chamber, we don't come in here as Republicans. We don't come in as Democrats. We don't come in as liberals. We don't come in as conservatives. We come in as members of the city of Murfreesboro, citizens whose main concern is the continuing of excellent educational opportunities for our least and most really vulnerable citizens. I ask in the future that such rhetoric would never again be used while addressing this board. And personally, and this is me, I condemn such speech in its strongest terms. I will not dignify the statement that was made at the end of the speech by repetition, but I wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, anything else from any other board member? Very well said, sir. Thank you. Is that a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Mr. Richardson. Have a second.
Second.
All right, thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night.